started now. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. We're going to talk about our proposed water rate structure and utility bills. This is sort of part two in a three-step process, which started last year with the millage votes. We're now putting together the water rates, which will be part of the water ordinance, which is adopted at the same time as the budget. That all happens in June. But this is our first rollout of what we've been discussing for how we're proposing to go forward with water rates.
Are you using the microphone?
Yes, I will be using the microphone. Okay. So this is the key points, Cliff Notes version. Our utility bills are going to go down. They will be cheaper in the coming year, which begins on July 1st, 2015. That's the next fiscal year for the city. That's when the new rates will take effect. That's when the new millages take effect. Every resident will see their utility bills go down. The city, we are facing increases in our wholesale charges. This seems to happen every year, but Detroit Water and Sewer and Oakland County are passing through more and more costs to us, and those go up at a rate higher than inflation every year. But the good news is we can absorb those from this year and still have an overall utility bill decrease. Another thing we're seeing is a lot of regional entities are moving to more of a fixed cost model. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But our water rates are going to be competitive with other communities in the region, and particularly SACWA communities that are part of a 14 community cooperative purchasing entity. And when it comes down to it, the revenue that we generate through utility bills is there simply to cover our costs. And we'll talk about those as well. So the water fund, at its most basic level, it's an enterprise fund. And this is a type of governmental fund that exists merely to cover its own costs. The water and garbage, solid waste pickup charges cover the expenses the city pays for those. It's a segregated entity within the accounting. It doesn't have anything to do with the general fund that property taxes pay for. And those user fees have to pay for the service rendered. So when we talk about comparing costs, one thing that we often hear is, well, my friend in such and such a community pays, $4 for water, and I'm paying $400 for water, and that's not fair. But there's a lot of things that you have to take a look at or take into account when looking at the cost of water, because the apportionment of costs differs by community. Some things can go in a water fund, or they can be subsidized by a general fund. Some communities have property taxes that pay for some of the expenses that are in our water fund. And the communities that pay for those services with property taxes are fewer, but that can happen. Our utility bills include water and garbage pickup. Not every community's water bills include garbage pickup, so that's an inflator. So comparing across communities is difficult. But we can try to benchmark where we sit compared to many other communities. So two of the things we look at are water fund expenses and the millage rate. Because your total cost of living is the property taxes you pay, the cost of water you pay, basically all of that money that comes out of your budget every year and goes to the city you live in. There's a few different ways that the city can collect that money. So when we look at all of the communities that are in SACWA, which is a Southeastern Oakland County Water Association. It's a cooperative that together buys bulk wholesale water from Detroit and then resells it to the local communities, getting us a better rate. These are the communities. So, we can compare by total water fund expenses, but there's obviously a huge disparity with Southfield having 30 times the budget that we have. So one way to normalize that is to look at water fund expenses per capita. As a way of benchmarking where we sit. So our water fund has a budget this fiscal year of about $1.27 million, which equates to about $502 for every resident. And when you look at these other communities, ranging from Hazel Park at $311 per resident up to Birmingham at $774 per resident. The interesting thing to look at here is the millage rate. So it's not a perfect correlation, but generally speaking, the communities that have a lower water fund expenses per capita have somewhat higher millage rates. So you have the lowest millage rate in Birmingham and a high water fund expense per capita. Southfield has sort of high in both. but down in the bottom, you have higher millage rates up in the 30 mil range. So that's just an example of how expenses in one place balance out in the other. So when we order this by millage rate, this is just ordering the same communities by the other column, you'll see that Pleasant Ridge, right now, we are in the bottom grouping of 4. And then there's a big jump from our 18.64 mils up to Lathrop Village's 22.5 mils. And so here you can see again that when you have higher millage rates, the water fund expenses per capita are typically lower than you see in the bottom communities. So this is just an example to kind of put into context where we've been at. Yes, our water bills have been high, but the property taxes we pay here have been relatively low. So we know that we approved millages last November. So this is an update of that chart, taking into account the changes that will occur due to those millages. So this millage rate, this new one for Pleasant Ridge, this 22.3, that's the park millage for the Gainsborough Park improvements and the community center park improvements and the general operating millage that was approved. So this is all of the new millages and the library renewal. And you'll see that our expenses per capita dropped to 472 when some expenses that were covered by the water fund will be covered by the general fund now. So what's happened is Pleasant Ridge, we haven't jumped over anybody in our millage rate. We're still a relatively low cost community from a millage rate perspective, but our water expenses will go down as well. So we talked a little bit about expenses. We have external costs that are passed on to us that we have to cover no matter what. Delivery and disposal of water, that's rising faster than inflation. And we have a 100-year-old water system here, and that takes maintenance and upkeep every year just to be able to bring you water and take it away from your house when you turn the tap and the faucet on. And there's maintenance and operation costs that come along with that. So we also see an expense trend where wholesale providers are moving to a fixed cost model. In the past, it was typically done where your usage was calculated, and if you used 1 million gallons of water, you were billed for 1 million gallons of water that year by Detroit, by Oakland County. But there's a lot of fluctuation from year to year. And we've seen in the last 3 years, we had a very, very dry year that was very warm, and then we've had a very, very wet year, and water usage drastically varied between those 2 years, which made budgeting difficult. Oakland County and Detroit, we're finding that they're having shortfalls in some years because of the uncertainty this caused. So they're all moving to a fixed cost model where they take anywhere from a 2 to a 4 year average looking backwards and then say, based on that average, Pleasant Ridge, you owe us $1 million this year. And it doesn't matter how much water you use or don't use this year, you have to pay us $1 million. And then they update that every year based on the previous year's usage. So that gives them budget certainty, but it sort of passes the risk on to us to some level because, as you know, our water rate is a rate. We have very, very low fixed portion of our water bills, and it's mostly based on the water you use, $125.36 per million cubic feet that you use. So when you look at our water fund expenses, and you probably can't read this from where you're sitting, so I'll narrate it for you. This is 2014-15. This is our current budget year. This is 2015-16, and this is what our water fund expenses will look like in the coming budget year, which begins on July 1st. The blue at the top is water purchases. This is the cost of water to the city that we use. Every year, we use on average about 75 million gallons of water in the city. That's what everyone who lives in town and the businesses, that's the water they purchase. So the cost, the wholesale cost of that is about $177,000 this year. That'll raise to about $180,000 next year. You'll see this little tiny blue sliver right here. That's actually for the first time Oakland County passing along a fixed portion of the water wholesale that we pay. So the variable portion of our water is $180,000 or $177,000 this year, but we're also going to have for the first time an $18,000 fixed water charge from Oakland County. So our total cost of water is going up to about $200,000 this year. This peach is the administrative charges, which are being largely offset by the new general operating millage. You'll see that drops to $30,000 here. That peach bar has gotten much smaller. This little gray sliver here is G.W. Kuhn drain debt. We'll talk about that. That's not changing. It's about $25,000 a year. These two gray bars are depreciation, staying consistent at about $115,000 a year. This is maintenance. These brown bars, those are about $65,000 a year. Again, that's a cost we incur every year to fix the sewers when they start to collapse, or to fix water leads to people's houses, when they freeze in the wintertime. We have a number of those. We had to dig up Cambridge after we had just finished rebuilding the road to fix a water main break. So the water fund has to handle that. The yellow bar here is professional services. That's engineering. That's Royal Oak, who's our on-call water and sewer department. So that's their charges. In the green, these are supplies, computers, things like that to do the billing. This is wages and salaries for our water employees. And then these big bars down here is sewage treatment costs. So you'll see that this is the bulk of the expenses in the water and sewer fund, is sewage treatment, actually. This is $550,000 roughly, and increasing about 3% this year. So that is far and away the largest expense in the water fund that it has to handle. Now, I'll talk briefly about the G.W. Kuhn drain. This is really informational only, but what you see here is a map. There's 14 communities, with Hazel Park over to, here's Pleasant Ridge and Ferndale, Oak Park, part of Southfield, Birmingham, and a large part of Troy, and everything in between, Royal Oak, Masson Heights. These communities drain to the G.W. Kuhn drain. It's a Chapter 20 drain, and it eventually leads out to the Red Run, and then on out to the Clinton River and into the Great Lakes. All of the water flows to this point right here. And that's where the G.W. Kuhn facility is. You may have seen, it's that kind of thing behind the fence, behind the Home Depot and Lowe's over on 12 Mile. That's the Kuhn drain facility. This was improved in the late 90s through the early 2000s as a result of court order. This is a combined sewer overflow facility. So in Pleasant Ridge and in most of southeast Oakland County, our sewers are combined. So when you flush the toilet or run the tap, it goes into the sewers, and when the water comes in from the street, it goes in the same sewers. So in dry days, that baseline flow goes on over, and there's an interceptor, and then it goes south, and it goes into Detroit. But when there's a wet weather event and the volumes in that system increase and mixes with all of the stuff that you flush, the water is diverted, and it goes up to the G.W. Kuhn facility, where they treat the water, they screen out solids, they put chlorine in there to neutralize any of the active biological, so that when it goes out into the water system, it's treated, it's neutralized, and it doesn't cause pollution. So that's what the G.W. Kuhn facility is. And when we talk about sewer, it includes that stormwater and sewer treatment, and it includes that Kuhn debt that we have to pay for that system. It was, I don't know, how many millions of dollars was it, Scott, for that system? $144 million. So Oakland County paid for those bonds and then sends a bill to all of the communities every year for that. So getting down to the details of what's coming in the upcoming year, water sales have to cover $1.17 million of expenses. So we need to generate that revenue every year. That's a reduction of $105,000 from our current fiscal year, and that includes the cost increases that we're getting from Detroit, 14% increase in water charges, and probably 3% increase in sewage treatment charges. Even with those increases, our water fund expenses are going down by $105,000. So I talked about those fixed expenses, and everybody is moving to more of that model, and we're proposing to follow suit. So we would have a fixed ready-to-serve charge, and then there would be the water consumption rate. You'll only be billed for the water you use. Right now there's that 0.9 MCF minimum usage. The reason for that is to generate a minimum amount of revenue, so the city knows that we would have enough money coming in to reasonably cover costs. Going to the fixed ready-to-serve charge, we don't need the minimum usage charge anymore. So now if you use 0.5 MCF, you'll only be billed for 0.5 MCF. You won't be billed for 0.9 MCF of usage. And we're proposing to go to a bi-monthly billing cycle, which is 6 bills per year, a bill every 2 months, instead of a bill every 3 months. So the proposed ready-to-serve charge that you'll receive every 2 months is $28.35. Your garbage pickup fee will be $15.60. So those are fixed charges. You'll pay those if you don't turn the tap on, if you don't flush a toilet, if you don't do a single load of laundry. You'll pay those fixed charges, and those are just to pick up the garbage and make sure that we can bring the water and take it away from your house when you're ready for that to happen. And then the water and sewer usage rate will go down to $101.50, which is a reduction from the $125.36 per MCF that we bill right now. That variable rate, $31.80 of that covers water, and then the $69.70 covers the sewer charges that we pay. That's basically a pass-through. That's just covering what we have to pay to Oakland County and Detroit. So the ready-to-serve charge, what does this cover? It covers the maintenance and upkeep of the Pleasant Ridge system. The ready-to-serve charge that we're proposing will generate about $198,000 of guaranteed revenue. And we have about $295,000 of expenses that we can cover with a ready-to-serve charge every year. We can't pay for the sewer and the sewer treatment expenses. We can't pay for those with a ready-to-serve charge legally. And we are barred from paying for the G.W. Kuhn drain debt by the order that caused those, the judge's order that caused those improvements to be made, said you can't bill this fixed. So we have to bill the G.W. Kuhn through the usage rate. So we're covering about 2/3 of our eligible expenses with a ready-to-serve charge. So what's going to happen is under the current situation with the minimum bill, you have a guaranteed annual fixed charge of $451 for your water use. That'll go down to $170 of fixed charges now. So we're actually going to reduce the amount of fixed charges that residents cannot avoid every year. And you'll see where this puts us in relation to our neighbors. You know, we're kind of right in this middle grouping that starts with us and then goes up to Oak Park with $170 to $214 of annual fixed charges. Some of these communities have very low fixed charges, and Berkeley has very high fixed charges. So just looking at this in a different way, our water wholesale costs are about $205,000. We're projecting. Our system maintenance costs are about $298,000. That's those eligible expenses that we could bill using ready-to-serve charge. And then the sewer treatment's $207,500. Stormwater treatment is coming in at about $345,000, and GWK debt costs us about $115,000 every year. So our water system expenses are about $500,000, and our sewer expenses are about $670,000. When you take out the revenue generated by the ready-to-serve charge, that reduces the system maintenance down to $99,000. So you see the remaining is $304,000 of water expenses and $668,000 of sewer expenses we have to cover. And then that translates to where those rates are calculated at, how we got to that $101.50 number. Bi-monthly billing, why are we going to bi-monthly instead of quarterly? Well, every other bill that you get for a utility comes every month. If the cable company sent you a bill for $500 every 3 months, it would be a shock, but it's $160 every month. It makes it feel a little bit less painful, I guess. So that's one reason. The other is quicker feedback. You know, every time a bill comes out and somebody finds that their water bill is abnormally large, we almost always find that there's a leak somewhere in their system, that there's a toilet they have that's leaking, that there's a furnace humidifier, something is happening, that water is just going down the drain and they don't know about it. Going to bi-monthly bills means you'll get notice of that a month earlier and you'll be able to avoid a month's worth of costs going down the drain. So that's quicker feedback. And also you can adjust your usage based on more frequent feedback from your usage billing. We considered going to monthly billing, but we don't really have the administrative capacity to do that without adding more staff, without adding more technology. So we can stay on top of bi-monthly billing using the equipment and the staff that we have. So that's what we're proposing. We're not the only communities that will do bi-monthly billing. Southfield and Rochester Hills and Garden City do bi-monthly, and there's a number of communities that do monthly billing, typically larger communities, Sterling Heights, Pontiac, Commerce Township. So communities with a little bit more resources to do that can do monthly billing. So here's a comparison. Our fixed fee per bill Under the proposed scenario, it'll be $28.35. Currently, it's $2.40. That's that meter read charge that's on your bill right now. The rate will be $101.50 compared to $125.36. Minimum water usage, 0, down from 0.9. So your minimum water charge per bill will be that $28.35 ready-to-serve charge. And your annual minimum water bill, assuming you use no water, will be $170.10. The garbage pickup fee, this one is going down by about half. So your annual garbage pickup fee will be $93.60 compared to $173.44 where it is right now. So your annual minimum utility bill will be $263.70 as opposed to $634 right now. And of course, any water you use is then piled on top of that. But the benefit of this system is you have a better ability to control the size of your bill by controlling the amount of water that you use. We're starting at a lower base point of fixed costs, and then you adjust from there based on your water usage. So I said earlier it's hard to compare across communities, but let's do it anyways. So you'll see Pleasant Ridge Old and Pleasant Ridge New, and this is the average water usage in Pleasant Ridge, 8.8 thousand cubic feet per year. One standard deviation from the mean on the low side is 1.8 MCF per year, and one on the high side is 15.7. So these are 3 scenarios for a low, average, and high water user, and this shows that what the impact of these changes will be. This is just water. This doesn't factor in those savings that everybody's going to get on their garbage pickup bills. But if you're a low user, your bill will go down by $120-something. An average user, the bill goes down by about $80, and then a high user, the bill goes down by $270. And the differences have to do with changing from the fixed charge at 0 versus the fixed charge being at 0.9. So it used to be a curve like this, and now it's a curve like this. So when you deflect that, there's a little bit different benefit that accrues to people on different points on that curve, but everybody will have lower bills. And you'll see that our bills, we were high. Now we'll be comparable, still a little bit higher, but comparable to many of the communities around us like Royal Oak, Huntington Woods, Lathrop Village. Our water costs on an annual basis will be competitive with those other communities, which was an important goal that we had to make sure that our water was competitive from a pricing standpoint. So the bottom line, all households are going to have lower utility bills. The average water savings will be $86 per year, and the garbage pickup savings will be $80 per year, and that's guaranteed. So the average total utility bill savings is $166 a year. And how much you save on water is a function of how much you use, and that is entirely up to you at this point. So that's the presentation. I think we spent 26 minutes on that, so I made the 30-minute limit. And with that, we'll open it up to discussion, comments, questions. The process from here is this will be going as a proposal to the City Commission as a rate ordinance that they have to adopt in June. So this is the proposed method going forward. We've tested this thoroughly to make sure that we'll still be able to cover our costs while accomplishing the revenue reduction. And with that, any questions? Gene?
Would we be able to cut back on our sewer fees if more people use rain barrels and use that to water their lawns?
No. And this is a question that I asked Oakland County last year. And Oakland County doesn't meter our stormwater runoff. It's done on a calculation basis. Now, the sewage cost, it's all basically fixed. So no, because one of the things that I was exploring was, can we do green infrastructure? Could we, instead of putting water in the sewers, could we divert it to rain gardens and put it back in the ground here? And we can do that, but there will be no payback from Oakland County because of the way that they calculate their charges.
Still a good thing to do.
Still a good thing to do, absolutely. And we started looking at some green infrastructure things, ways of infiltrating some of the street runoff, because it'll help with the ponding, that we get during heavy rain events, and it's just a good thing to do, but we won't get necessarily a financial payback from that. So, yes.
It might be the same question she's asking, but are the other counties allowed to have like separate meters for their irrigation system, which they pay a different sewage on?
Some communities do that, but none that I'm aware of in the Saukwa area. And again, I've explored this with the county as well. The presumption is, they're often called irrigation meters. And, you know, the water that you put on your lawn presumably doesn't run off into the sewers. So that doesn't generate those sewage charges. But again, Oakland County doesn't meter the sewer, and so their fixed charges will be the same if we allow for irrigation meters. So what happens then is that water that you take and do that for the irrigation meter, and you're not charging the sewage charges on that, because our fixed costs don't change, the rate that everyone pays through their primary meter goes up. So then, you know, we might be looking at $150 per MCF for the water that you use in your house, and everybody pays that, even if you don't irrigate your lawn. So that,
You're liable to use more water, which could do harm to everybody.
right, so that drastically changes the costs across everybody in the city by allowing for those. So most communities don't allow for them. You also have some issues, where you have to inspect those every year because people can divert the water from those into their house so that they don't pay the sewage on any of the water that they use. So there are some issues. You have cross-connection issues with those, so, yeah. We have explored that, though. Yes?
Well, will we get a regular bill then in June? And when would the every 2 months billing start?
Great question. So what will happen is, right now, our water billing cycle covers May, June, and July, even though our fiscal year starts on July 1st. So we always have to apportion part of that one bill over 2 fiscal years. And when the rate gets set, that rate is retroactively applied to the previous fiscal year. So what we're going to do when we go to the 2-month billing cycle is you will get a bill for May and June. It'll be a 2-month bill, but it'll be under the current billing system. So we're going to prorate everything. It'll be a 0.6 MCF minimum usage charge. Your garbage pickup fee on that bill will be 2/3. $43.60, I think, is the fixed garbage charge. It'll be 2/3 of that. And then that'll be for the last fiscal year. That'll be the last bill under the old system. And then we'll start with the new billing cycle starting on July 1 so that our bills and our fiscal year line up. So then there'll be a bill for July and August. You'll receive that bill in September, pay it in October. That will be the first bill under the new billing cycle. Yes?
And we purchased some water servicing from neighboring communities, and we've had some problems with the lack of response in the service we've gotten. Is there any opportunity to look around, maybe see if somebody else can provide either better service or the same service at lower cost than what they're providing, particularly in the city of Royal Oak, has been problematic?
I'm not sure what's been problematic.
Well, last winter, I had a water line from the city freeze underneath the street. I went 40 days in my home without water service. When the boiler ran out, he shut off. We had thousands of dollars worth of damage because the city of Royal Oak wouldn't put me up on the list to come out and fix the problem, restore water service. Yeah, and to tap it off, I got a $150 water bill for that time period.
Okay, I'm not sure. We haven't heard many complaints. Royal Oak is typically pretty responsive.
40 days is not responsive.
I understand. Let me look into that.
Okay, Scott's familiar with the situation.
Okay. Yes, that is something we could bid. The fact of the matter is there's not a lot of communities that could provide the level of service to us, but we could do that. The costs we pay to Royal Oak are pretty good compared to what we've paid in the past, just benchmarking looking backwards. But if the service quality isn't there, something we could look into. Anybody else? Okay, we have some fact sheets that basically summarize everything we've talked about, but those are available in the back if you want to take one of those with you. We'll make those available on the website for anyone who may be watching online or on TV. You can access that online at the website, and I think we're going to put in a abridged version of those in the Ridger. I think we're going to put one of those in the abridged version of the Ridger. It was a last-minute addition that I'm not sure if we can accommodate or not, but something to that effect will also be mailed to every house in June when the rate ordinance is approved and this is final. We'll make sure everyone has ample warning and knowledge of what's coming up. And other than that, thank you for coming out, and grab a cookie.